Hello guys! So, first, before we start the lesson, I want to tell you something about these videos. They are not transcripts of the lesson, they're my commentaries where I try to explain a bit more in detail, and I will also focus on your progress, so do watch them. And also second thing is about your homework. So I see that most of you are late with your homeworks, and it's okay, fine, but the reason for this intense pace, 2 homeworks per week, is because I want you to start publishing as soon as possible and start writing your stories as soon as possible. And believe me, I know that maybe it looks like a hard task for you, but with my help, and which you should ask more often, you will be able to really do this, because I think you don't need more than 1 or 2 hours a week for this. And yeah, of course I suggest more, because the better will be your story. But the point is, these lessons are not like we do lesson 1 and then you forget about lesson 2. It's not like we do a lesson 2 and then you forget about lesson 3. We will constantly be moving back and forth, and we'll constantly be improving your stories. So maybe some of you feel that I already covered this part, I'm not rushed to write homework, or like, oh my god, I will not make it. But believe me, it's important to try to stick to the schedule, because then I can track your progress and explain as early as possible if there's something to be clarified, or if I need to give more examples or whatever. So I warned you to be more diligent with the homework, but in the same time I will tell you that this is sort of fluent work. So for example, this lesson number 3, which will be about world building, also gives you sort of time to work again on your theme and plot, because this lesson, for example, is not as labor intensive as the others, but it does require more thinking, in sense like, okay, noticing things and implementing them in your story. Because right now I totally believe in your creativity, I totally believe in your ideas, I see that you come up with themes and plots and characters and all the other elements of the story, but I don't want it to be a flood of random ideas that maybe have some flaws or not detailed parts enough that you maybe overlook. I want you to be a construction, and that's why this course is for. We want to make a precise construction which will be even more creative than some just open the floodgates and see what happens kind of affair. Speaking of that, let's start with world building, which is a huge topic, and it deserves at least 1, if not more, workshops. I'm currently working on a specialized workshop for world building. And world building you will constantly notice in role-playing games, also in fantasy or science fiction kind of interactive fiction, but actually world building is much deeper than that. I will cover both aspects of world building in this lesson. So basically, why is world building important is because it's basically your setting of your story. And when we think about the setting of your story, it's like, where is your story happening? But not only geographically, but what are the circumstances that your story is happening? Like, what is the cultural environment? What is the historical environment? What is the also geographical environment? What kind of universe this story is happening? It can be totally different, with different rules of physics, whatever. So we need to keep track for this. But there is also one more subtle note about world building, and that's what kind of little rules of behavior or reaction of the world to the action that happens in your story. What is it like? And the best way to illustrate this, best way to notice this is, of course, if you remember the TV shows. I'm sure you all guys enjoy TV or movies or books, but whatever. In every of these medium, there is this a sort of level of plausibility, a levels of realism. That's also part of world building. So, for example, if we have a light action movie, designed to entertain, things will be over the top. It's already been nicknamed like Hollywood style realism. So that's obviously when people fly, objects fly, everything blasts. People just get shot and fall down. There's no blood, or but then there's grittier movies, grittier TV shows where more realistically things happen. and so on and so forth. So each genre has their own sort of rules how the setting should work. And I also call you to remember, like, when there's about entities inside the world building. So why I call them entities? Because they could be organizations, it could be social groups, it could be, you know, whatever, tribes, corporations. And these entities are differently depicted in different worlds. For example, two TV shows can be set in the same world, like Earth, same time, like modern. But for example, in a TV show where the FBI is the main hero, they will be depicted as, you know, strong, smart, you know, loyal to the state, blah blah. And then you will see this local sheriff department officers or common cops that are always depicted like a bit stupid, a bit, you know, annoying, and, you know, stopping the progress, blah blah. While the show, which is set in the same city, maybe in the same time, but from if it's from the point of view of policemen or sheriff departments, then you will see that they are, you know, smart and streetwise and cool, and the FBI guys are stuck up and stupid and, you know, bureaucratic and stopping the progress, blah blah. So this is very subtle note about world building, how you don't have to invent whole worlds, but you will have to invent certain elements such as social rules or these entities. How are they? FBI in one world doesn't have to be the same FBI in the other world. So you have to, when you build your story, you have to see through your team and through your plot what kind of rules you have to apply to your world. Of course, if you're writing a sci-fi or fantasy story, you will want to build your own world with new rules, and that's why, of course, because it's very difficult, we often borrow, like, okay, let's borrow from history and say this is happening in medieval kind of Europe. There's even a nickname for it, like fantasy medieval or faux medieval setting. Then, of course, there is. It's not, of course, the only setting that you can use, but people usually, you know, return to these historical settings because they are ready-made by, you know, life itself. So, again, if you're doing this kind of, you know, retro, or putting the action of your story in some historical or quasi-historical environment, you have to do your research and do what you're doing, know what you're doing in the sense of what elements are changed. For example, there's a story which changes Vikings for Celts. So this, the Celts are seafaring nation, not Vikings, for example. And I don't know, the empire they meet is based on sort of cross between Chinese and Roman. So they have some Roman-style military, but they have this Chinese kind of bureaucratic government. So yeah, you can mix and match, but make sure to, you know, that's why it's important to focus on world building in sense of explore what are the differences, to know exactly what are you changing, because some stories won't fit in all of worlds and times and places, and some stories are totally universal. So basically, I'm inviting you to read through the lessons where I gave examples about the setting, you know, how the subtle rules are different for entities, how the world also reacts to your characters. Because, for example, in a light TV show such as MacGyver or, I don't know, Tropical Heat or something, there's a lot of shooting, but not much blood, and of course there's no police to show up and say, stop, what are you doing, guys, why are you shooting at these people? Or if they have some crazy car chase, you know, no one's going to call cops on them. But for example, if we're watching police procedural show, depending on the level of grittiness, which is again another name for what kind of setting are we using, we will have these, you know, stricter rules and, you know, probably more gore, or, you know, crimes like piling up one case up on the other, and they solve some, they don't solve the others. While in, for example, typical classical murder crime fiction shows like, I don't know, Midsummer Murders or Murder, She Wrote, or even Monk, you will have this, you know, everything, huge focus on solving one case. You have ton of cops, ton of attention, narrative time. Everything is, you know, about this, solving this one murder. Just it seems like the world stopped and no murders are happening, only this one. So these are like the very subtle versions of that story world, differs from our story world. So you have to have in mind that it's okay to bend the rules of reality in this sense, so that you can emphasize something you want to say in your story. I mean, You're not writing reality show, you're writing fiction, you know. So I also gave the overview about the elements of world building for you who are making some extensive innovations. So you'll have to define physics for your world. If there's magic in your world, you have to know where does it come from, how does it manifest, is it the power of nature, is it supernatural power, are there some trade-offs like magic can do this and cannot do that. So yeah, you have to, you know, really also think about what kind of social aspects your changes bring. For example, if it's a world where everyone flies, what social differences would it incur on the society? For example, I don't know, maybe the fastest flyers or highest flyers would be elite, or maybe not flying at all would be big stigma and shame. Or for example, if there is magic in the world, how is it perceived? Is it illegal? Is it formalized? Is it licensed? Is it forbidden? And so on and so forth. Also, there's aspect of cosmology, like is your story even happening on a planet, or is it happening in a drop of water, or in some, you know, crazily shaped cosmic object? Are there God or gods, superpowers? Is there some mystical force that permeates everything and connects all, you know, like the force? Then you have to figure out the geography, like where is this story happening and why. Many of the stories pick extreme environments like ice world or desert world to emphasize some aspects that would otherwise burden the story. For example, in Dune's, Frank Herbert's Dune, we have this theme of ecology and how humans interact with nature. And of course, to emphasize this, the main story has to happen on a desert planet because it offers a limited ecosystem, which is easily or more easily built than some, you know, lush planet with many life forms. So basically, we have the desert, we have this sandworms, we have the sand trouts, we have some little mouse-like creatures. And, you know, it sort of limits the flora and fauna, so the writer can use them in for their team and for their plot. It doesn't have to, you know, bury themselves in inventing different life forms, and, you know, all the interactions that possibly spring from it. So there's also, of course, one of the most complex layers is the cultural layer, like what kind of customs are they, why are they happening there, what kind of social groups exist, secret societies, open societies, what kind of cultural flavor do you want for your story. So all these things really need to be thought through, but because this is a huge team, and also we don't need to, you know, not everyone needs to build the world from scratch for this story you're writing, but it will be nice to focus on a few elements that you already recognize that will be important. For example, one of you has a story which is happening on a market of some kind, and it would be very nice to, you know, map the geography of the place, so you know what's happening where, and, you know, to sketch for yourself or describe for yourself how does it look like, what are the rules of the market, customs on the market, you know. So yeah, the richer the world you build, the better the story is, because you will feel more comfortable with this world. And comfortable is for writer very important for confidence, because if you write with more confidence, then yeah, it's easier for you, and it's also easier for reader to imagine things because you can see them, you can really vision them. I told you of the example how a guy wrote a better story than me for some chase that's happening in Prague, but I was there. I know how it looks like. I was writing with more confidence, and my story won because, yeah, simply my writing was more confident, and it was more appealing to a reader. So also I would like to make one sort of analogy, because, you know, usually writers don't enjoy world building too much, because at one point you'll realize that, oh my god, I built this huge world and my readers will see only a bit of it, a piece of it. And it's true, but also it's not the work that you've invested in vain, because readers do sense all these things. For example, I wrote a short story which is like 1 page, but there's huge amount of information and impressions that the reader takes from it, and I won some prize. I forgot which one, but it was like, wow, everyone was like, this is so short and yet so deep. And I would compare it to a pizza, and I'm not joking. Like, if you make really nice big pizza with lush toppings, and then when you cut the slice, it will be really yummy, and you won't get like just a bit of crust and just a bit of toppings. So yeah, it's worth baking a huge pizza, even if you get to eat just one slice, because it will be really delicious one. So yeah, I laid out, because this world building lesson is a bit big in volume, in a sense. You can go really wild here and describe maybe one location, or maybe one group, or maybe entire state, or one city, or whatever you want. I wrote sort of guide in the end to help you, like how to guide yourself through this homework, what to do. And basically what you have to do is to take two kinds of elements of world building and build. So for example, first element will be a location, something connected to location, so like a continent, a country, a city, or some monument, or some vista, or whatever. So pick a location that will be important for your story, and don't invent any, just read from your theme and from your plot. Think what kind of iconic location could fit the best your plot. I don't know, if your plot is about isolation, maybe it could be an island. If your plot is about some, I don't know, glorification of something, maybe it can be some monument to something. That is the key. So always try to imagine what kind of elements fit your theme and your plot. And the second one is like, try to find one entity to describe, and by entity I mean, like, maybe it's a secret society, maybe it's a family, maybe it's a country, maybe it's some corporation or some government agency. It can be existing agency, only how you in your world, in your story, will treat it. For example, someone can write a story about CIA and depict them as conspiracy plotting, cruel bastards, and someone might want to just depict, I don't know, a local fire station, and imagine what kind of charity they would do, for example. So yeah, play, you guys. This is a writing course, and I'm not here to push you in some boxes or cliches. Go crazy, go be playful, but with this sticking to the spine of theme and plot, you can make really nice elements that are not only playful and imaginative and crazy and good, but also they fit in the bigger picture of the story. So yeah, for your final writing, you will have to do a lot of this world building, a lot of this setting building. But for now, let's just play with two elements, one location and one entity, and let's build them. Also, for you who didn't do your homework, do it by Tuesday, so I can see how you manage with the plot. But also, I think this exercise will help you, because if you think of your plot and you immediately think of some, locations where it might be happening, some time where it might be happening, some period where it might be happening, or some entire new world where it might be happening. And you can also immediately try to connect, like, what fits my theme, what illustrates my theme, that's the plot, and where would this plot be best implemented. Like, if I'm going to write about social justice warriors on the internet, obviously it has to be in some society where internet exists in the way we know it today, or I don't know, if I want to write about cobblers, it would have to be a world where cobblers still are in business, and not just some exotic hobbyists. So yeah, have fun, and see you on Tuesday. Bye.